I'm recording this video with permission from Scholastic. So now we're going to be reading chapter 10. In our last chapter, we just learned that Miss Chatham, the principal of Nick's elementary school, came to his house to talk to his parents about the problems that have been going on and how it's been really disruptive, and Miss Granger doesn't like that Nick's using the new word Frindle. So that's kind of what we covered before. I wanted you guys in our last chapter to stop and think about where you stand. Do you think that, are you more on Nick's side? Are you more on Miss Granger's side? Are you somewhere in the middle? I want you to think about that and see if that changes as we go along. Because, you know, sometimes when I read stories, at first I really side with one character, but as I read and you learn more about each of them, your perspective might change. So keep that in mind as we're reading. This chapter is called Freedom of the Press. Judy Morgan was a reporter for the Westfield Gazette, the local newspaper. Westfield was a quiet little town. There was the occasional burglary. The teenagers got rowdy once in a while, and there was some shouting at the town council or the planning board now and then. But mostly, things were calm and orderly in Westfield, and every Thursday the Westfield Gazette proved it. Ted Bell sold advertisements for the paper, and he had a daughter in the 4th grade at Lincoln Elementary. He had told Judy that a bunch of 5th graders were making trouble and were not obeying teachers anymore, that there was something about a secret code word they were all using. And half of the students had been kept after school one day last week, including his own little girl. The only other story Judy was working on was about 18 new trees that were going to be planted along East Main Street. The trees could wait. This thing at Lincoln Elementary School sounded like a real story. So Judy showed up at Lincoln Elementary School at 3 o'clock the day after Miss Chatham had been to visit Nick's parents. The sign on the door said, "All visitors must report to the office," and she did. On the bulletin board outside the office, Judy saw Miss Granger's notice about the punishment about using the word Frindle. She stepped back 2 paces, aimed her camera at the notice, and snapped a photo. She read the notice once more, and then stepped into the office. Miss Freed, the school secretary, looked up and smiled. "May I help you?" "Yes, I'm sure you can. My name is Judy Morgan, and I work for the Westfield Gazette. I'd like to know about that poster outside the office. The one about this word, Frindle. Who should I talk to?" Miss Freed stopped smiling. She was sick and tired of hearing anything to do with that word. For the past week, her phone had been ringing off the hook. If it wasn't a parent complaining about a child who had to stay after school, it was someone from the school board trying to get in touch with Miss Chatham or Miss Granger. Miss Freed pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes. She said, "You'll have to speak with the principal. Let me see if Miss Chatham is free." She was. There isn't a principal alive who won't find the time to talk to someone from the local newspaper. The reporter was invited to into Miss Chatham's office. Judy noticed right away that the principal was not comfortable talking about this stuff. When asked about the poster outside the office door, Miss Chatham laughed and said, "Oh, that. It's really nothing. Some kids have been playing a little prank, and it was time to put a stop to it." The principal's laugh sounded phony to Judy Morgan. "And I did notice that you put an end to that prank. I heard that there are a lot of children kept after school last week. Would you tell me a little more about that? Parents would like to know what's going on." Miss Chatham looked like a kid who had been sent to the principal's office. She squirmed a little in her chair and tried to smile. She said, "Well, we still do have a little problem, but it's under control. Miss Granger may have overreacted a bit. I don't think the children have really been trying to be disrespectful. They're more just having fun, and it's more like a difference of opinion." And then Miss Chatham went off to tell the reporter that she knew about the word Frindle and how it had become popular among the students. Judy Morgan took careful notes. And when the principal had finished, Judy Morgan said, "Would you mind if I asked Miss Granger a few questions?" Miss Chatham said, "No, not at all." But Judy could tell that the principal wished she would just go away. What could she say, though? Miss Chatham couldn't very well keep the reporter away from Miss Granger because, after all, America is a free country with a free press. If Judy really wanted to, she would talk to Miss Granger sooner or later. It was sooner. In 3 minutes, Judy Morgan was standing at the doorway of room 12, looking in at Miss Granger. There were about 15 children sitting at desks scattered around the room, busy writing out their 100 sentences. She knocked, and the teacher and students looked up from their work. "I'm Judy Morgan from the Westfield Gazette. Miss Granger, may I have a word with you?" Miss Granger stood up and came out into the hallway and closed the door. Judy could see past her and saw that every kid in that room was straining to listen. Judy noticed Miss Granger's eyes right away. Gray, maybe flecked with a little gold, and very sharp. But not hard or mean. Just bright and strong. The reporter didn't waste words. "So I hear that you plan to stop the students from using their new word? How goes the battle?" Miss Granger did not smile, and her eyes got even brighter. "First of all, it is not a battle. I am merely helping my students to see that their foolishness should stop. Such a waste of time and thought. There is no reason to invent a new and useless word. They should each learn to use words we already have. But of course, all of this is just a silly fad. And when you add an E to fad, you get fade. And I predict that this fad will fade." Judy looked up from her notepad and asked, "Any idea how it all got started?" Miss Granger's eyes seemed to catch fire at that question, and she said, "Yes, I have a very good idea how this all got started. It was one young man's idea, a 5th grade student named Nicholas Allen. And now you will have to excuse me, Miss Morgan, for I have papers I must grade." And with a brief, firm handshake, Miss Granger ended the interview. The reporter didn't leave right away. She walked back through the hallway and sat on the bench outside of the office so she could look over her notes to make sure that they made sense. It took her about 5 minutes. Then Judy stood up, put her notebook in her large black purse, waved goodbye to the frowning Miss Freed, and headed out the door. As she was walking to the parking lot, 5 or 6 kids who had just finished writing their sentences for Miss Granger came out another door. Judy walked beside them, listening to them laugh and joke. Then she asked them, "Why do you kids keep saying Frindle? Don't you just hate staying after school?" A boy was almost falling over from the weight of his backpack, looked up at her and smiled. "It's not so bad. There's always a bunch of my friends here. I've written that sentence 600 times now." That's a lot of times. And then the kids said Miss Granger didn't even look at their punishment papers anymore. They were sure because where you were supposed to write, "I am writing this punishment with a pen," everyone was writing the word Frindle every 4th or 5th sentence. And Miss Granger hadn't said anything. One girl bragged that she had written the word Frindle 45 times on her sheets today. She grinned and said, "That's a new record." "And this boy named Nick," Judy asked, "he has had to stay after school too?" The kids giggled, and a tall boy with reddish-brown hair and glasses said, "Miss Granger has kept Nick after school so much that everyone thinks she wants to adopt him." The reporter smiled and said, "Do you think I could find Nick and talk to him this afternoon?" The boy looked at Judy for a second and then said, I don't think Nick would want to talk to you right now. He might say something like stupid and get himself in trouble." Then he grinned at his friends. The kids laughed and poked and punched each other and headed off down the block. Judy drove back to her office and started writing. The next morning, a brown envelope arrived at the Gazette offices, addressed to Judy Morgan, and below her name was written, "Frindle's Story." When Judy opened it, there was a class picture, the 5th grade at Lincoln Elementary School. Miss Granger and the 6 other teachers were standing at the ends of the rows, and the kids were dressed neatly, hair combed, but there was something odd about the picture. The reporter looked closely and saw that each kid was holding up a pen, and each little mouth was puckered in the same way. She was puzzled for a second, but then she said softly, "Of course, they're all saying Frindle." Written on the back of the picture in neat cursive was 3rd row, 5th from the left. Judy looked at the picture, and there was the same grinning red-haired boy with glasses that she had talked to in the school parking lot yesterday. She chuckled and said, "Well, well, well. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Nicholas Allen." And then here's this picture. Here's a picture that was all of the students writing their punishment sentences, and some of them have included the word Frindle in there instead of the word pen. So I forgot to show you this. So here's the picture. So how many of you guys caught what was happening? At the end, the reporter wanted to talk to Nick, and she was running up to some kids and asking them, hey, where do you think I could find and talk to Nick Allen? Did any of you guys notice that Nick was the one talking? I know it was kind of subtly put in there, but it did describe him as, let's see here. Yeah, here. We read it earlier. And this boy named Nick, Judy asks, he has had to stay after school too? The kids giggled, and a tall boy with reddish brown hair and glasses said, Miss Granger has kept Nick after school so much that everybody thinks she wants to adopt him. So we see there that Nick was the one telling her this all along. So when we read at the end of this chapter, well, pleased to have met you, Mr. Nicholas Allen, we realize, like, the reporter is learning that Nick is sneaky. He's not just sneaky with his teachers, he's kind of sneaky with everybody. I would say the word I would use to describe Nick is clever. Clever can sometimes mean sneaky, but a lot of times it just means very creative and smart and just, clever. I would say clever is kind of like thinking of a way to do things that is kind of outside of the box. So most people would have just said, oh no, actually I'm Nick. Nick didn't say that. He just kind of slipped it in there to see if she would notice. And so I think that's really cool. I wonder what's going to happen in the next chapter. We did learn at the end that Nick was the one who sent her the picture. And we know that this is the truth because it says, it was clearly marked. Written on the back of the picture in neat cursive was 3rd row, 5th from the left. So Nick sent her this picture, wrote which one he was to prove that he had already talked to her. So why don't you stop and think about what you think is going to happen next, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.